Thank you, Ruby. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate that. Made me wish we had more of an orchestra here, right? Yeah. I'm sure there's other instrument players out there. You have to wonder, though, in Lebanon, here where we're here, would it be a violin or a fiddle? Where do we fall in that divide, just not sure. In 2005, in the little town of Givas, I'm sure most of you haven't heard of Givas or been there. It's a little town in eastern Turkey. And when I say eastern Turkey, I mean it's almost to Iran. It's way over there. And it's a little agriculture town. Every morning the shepherds would get up. They'd let the sheep out of their pens. They'd start herding them up the road to the plateau where they would graze. Almost everybody, there's about 20 main families in this town, and they all had some sheep, and they would all be part of this big herd that would go up the road to the pasture. You can look it up on Google Earth, Givas, Turkey, and you can see that to the north of it, there's a nice big lake called Lake Van. I mean, huge lake. I'd like to visit Lake Van. And just to the south of it, there's a mountain. I mean, 11,000 feet mountain. And as the mountain, it comes down off the mountain, there's a plateau there. We would call it a steppe. And it's just a beautiful covered grassland, perfect for grazing sheep on. And there's really only one way up. And you get up there, and the sheep are in this perfect round pasture, huge, hundreds and hundreds of acres pasture, where they can't get away because they can't climb the mountain. It's a good thing they don't have goats. They got sheep. Can't climb the mountain going that way, and it's cliffs off the other way as it goes down toward the lake. So this was in 2005, a morning like any other morning. The shepherds got up and they got their sheep together, 1,500 sheep, and they start driving them up this road out onto the plateau where they can spread out and graze like they always did. And then, as they always did, the shepherds would all stop right there, kind of blocking the exit, and set up and cook breakfast together, set around in camp. There's no wolves, there's no predators. It's just, they can just hang out for a while. But this day was different. The sheep, instead of dispersing from this tight clump that came up the road together, usually they would just start spread out and start grazing. As soon as a sheep finds good grass, he's going to take it down to nothing. But this time they all stayed clumped in a clump together, and they just walked across the pasture and then walked off the cliff. 450 sheep died. About $100,000 worth of loss to this village, which was devastating in a little community that size. And the pile of carcasses, there really wasn't anything to salvage, either meat or wool. I mean, it was just a big, smelly pile of dead sheep. Made headlines around the world, because it was a very unusual event. And one of the places that raised alarm was Australia and New Zealand. Now, which country do you think raises the most sheep? China. Surprised me too. China. But Australia takes its sheep raising seriously. They are known for being in the sheep. So they got together some researchers and actually sent them to Turkey. We want to know why this happened. What are the reasons that this sheep would just walk off the cliff like that? Was it a virus? Was there, there's illness? Was sickness? Was, full moon? I mean, what was it? They want to know. So they sent some leadership over there and to study it. Now, I caution you to be careful about jumping to the conclusion that sheep are just stupid. Because in part of their research and study, they found the parallels between sheep behavior and people behavior had some astonishing similarities. In fact, there's a whole field of study called crowd psychology, or crowd theory even, and several branches of that. And the biggest one is, how do you control a crowd? And how do you do barriers? And some of this is really not intuitive. If you've got the exits there, the crowd tends to just bottleneck at the exit. And it doesn't make any sense, but if you move back about 20 feet from the exit and you put a row of pillars or big planters or whatever, that people hit that barrier first and have to go around those, say 4 big planters, it slows the surge down enough so that then the whole crowd can go through the door without a bottleneck. Some really interesting stuff, if that kind of thing does interest you at all. But it's not that the sheep were stupid. It's not that they had a virus or anything like that. And what you need to know is it wasn't just 450 sheep that died. All 1,500 walked off the cliff. It's just that by the time you get a pile of fluffy 450 below you, you can survive the fall off the cliff when you land on the sheep pile. And the rest of them survived. But the question is still why? Why? What leads sheep or lemmings or whatever to just walk off a cliff like that? See, we've got to get to the root of the question. The question isn't why Hitler killed 6 million people in gas chambers. The big question is, why did 50 million Germans, most of them Christians, go along with it? So the researchers researched, they hypothesized, and I'm sure their study ended like any other study that says we need more studies. But they did come to some conclusions. They actually, this was from real research. They'd set up these little runways with fences, and the majority of the sheep are marching this way, and then you got another group coming this way. Will the little group turn around and follow the big group? And they really did try to figure this out. And here's what they came up to, their conclusion. The sheep in the front thought that they were being herded from behind. And the sheep in the back thought they were being led from the front. Because sheep are one of those unusual animals. You can herd them or you can lead them. You can drive them or lead them. And they just either followed the intuitive thought instructions from behind to keep moving forward, and they just did. And the ones behind was follow the guy in front of you, and they just did. And off the cliff they went. See, everybody's a leader. You have a sphere of influence. You have a circle of people that you know that you lead in, maybe just in some area in that. But everybody is a leader, and everybody's a follower. The important thing is to know who you're leading and who's following. And you just have to think, one good border collie could have made such a good difference that day, right? Know who you're following and know who you're leading. Everybody has a leader. Everybody is a leader. And we need to understand that and not shirk it. There comes a time, and any of you who've tried to fill in slots for, who will do scripture reading and who will do special music, people don't volunteer. You have to ask them. And then some people will say, well, I don't feel led in that. We're not asking you to sell your home and be a missionary in Africa. We're just asking you to participate. Just jump in. But it's part of leadership, is understanding. People don't volunteer. You have to ask. Now, leadership is not management. Okay, the worst kind of leaders are managers, because you shouldn't manage people. You should manage things and lead people. And when you've got a poor leader who thinks he's the manager, he's trying to manage people, and people start to feel like objects, and it's no fun. You don't want to work in that place. So manage things and lead people. One of the definitive hallmarks of are you really a leader is you turn around and see if anybody's following. If nobody's following, you're just taking a walk. But in some aspect, everybody's a leadership. So here's the next question. What is leadership? Linda Hill, who teaches at Harvard Business School on leadership, says this: leadership is a process of self-development. She says, no one can teach you to lead. You need to be willing and able to learn how to lead. Mostly we learn from our experiences and facing adversity. Stepping outside of the spaces where we feel safe is the most powerful teacher. I mean, think about that. Leadership, and this is the expert's opinion, and as I've gone over it in my own head, I tend to concur. Leadership can't effectively be taught, but it can be learned. All of the impetus of that transfer of knowledge, of information, of experience is dependent on the pupil side of it, not the teacher side of it. I mean, you can learn from someone who's not even trying to teach you, can't you? You can watch how they do it. You can say, well, that's not going to do it that way. I mean, that's all part of learning. But leadership really is very difficult to teach, but if you're willing, it's very easy to learn. It's just the way it falls down. So we're going to take a look today, whether we could go to, many Bible examples of leadership. I'm going to pick Moses, just because he's so easy, he's there to make these points with. And we're going to look at several attributes of leadership, try and find them in the life of Moses, also try then to extrapolate that and say, how does my life exhibit that piece of leadership? And how could it be improved? Remember, it's all up to the pupil. It's not up to the instructor. Number one is authenticity. The number one attribute of a good leader is they're authentic. You don't have any doubt of who they are. It's interesting to me to see in marriage counseling, I guess especially, how often we stumble into a case where the person is one way in public and totally different at home. That's not authentic. That's duplicitous, the two-sided, the two-faced. And it destroys families and marriages. It should be your number one red flag warning if this person is different in public than they are at home. Now, we all have to put on our public face and smile, but that's not what I'm talking about. Are you the real core person? Are you different at home rather than out in public? Being genuine and true to who you are is fundamental to success in any role. And especially as a leader, you've got to know that. Your competence is not enough. People need to trust your character and then connect with you, otherwise they won't be willing to follow. So number one thing for a good leader is to be authentic. What about Moses? He went through these same steps, didn't he? He had to, when he gets, after his 40 years out there dealing with sheep, he comes back. He has to prove, even though he's got the power of God and everything with him, he still has to win these people to trust him, to follow. He's about to shake up their life. And it takes a while before they finally, but they do come to know and understand without any doubt that Moses is Moses. He's authentic, and he is who he says he is. Later on in Israel's history, we'll see many kings who try to play both sides of a fence, sort of thing. Not true with Moses. He was all in right there. The second attribute of a good leader is curiosity. Curiosity. It's about looking around the corner, exploring uncharted territory, trying to understand the art of the possible. Great leaders have kind of an outside-in perspective. They're able to step back and look at it and say, what would that happen if we, and that's the curiosity factor that lets them have that distance viewpoint, so to speak, so that they can then stand back and say, it's not just about our company, if they're business-oriented, but we can't do anything without customers. And in fact, we can't do anything without suppliers, and to kind of see a bigger picture. Same is true with church as well. Is Moses ever curious? I mean, yeah, one of the most outstanding stories we have is he's cruising along one day with the sheep, and he looks over, and what does he see? A burning bush. And what's he say? I got to go see that, man. And so he does. I'll tell you how curious Moses is. He wants to see the face of God, and he's willing to ask to do it. A very high curiosity quotient for Moses. How do you nurture curiosity? Children are born curious, and we need to stop stifling that curiosity. There's some little TV blurb where this kid is about to stick a key in the electrical outlet, and the mother's about to stop it, and the father goes, wait, and they don't show it, they just show the lights flicker. And he says, now you know. Curiosity satisfied. He will never do that again. Oh. But be open to new experiences. I mean, you're going to have a choice in a little while as you go through the fellowship meal line to try something you've never had before. Be brave. I mean, come on, just one little teaspoonful. Try something new. And the next week when you get back here to church, set somewhere else. It really messes with the pastor's mind when he's looking for people who are always in the same spots. But give it a try. This afternoon, go out in nature. You're looking for morel mushrooms, but look deeper than that. Look further around. Just be curious. Number 3 characteristic of a good leader is analytical prowess. Able to see a situation and analyze it, evaluate it. Really important. How to break down complex problems. Figure out what's the root cause of this. And then come up with some fresh solutions. Here's the problem. In this area, trusting your gut won't work. Your gut is always going to go with the way we always did it. You need to develop your analytical skills by focusing on cause and effect type. Well, what if we went door to door and we did this? What would happen there? And what's the big picture there? Now, Moses' father-in-law helps him a lot with this analytical part. Jethro shows up, and he's able immediately to see the situation, the problem with the situation, and even the solution to the problem with the situation. And Moses is pretty good at that as well. But to make sound decisions hinges on your ability to leverage your experience along with a blend of analytics, expertise, and ethical judgment. Okay, there's a call to be made there with some of those things. And how do you develop an analytical mindset? First, don't get sucked down in the data. It's so easy to see the report that says everybody who died in a plane crash had eaten carrots within 90 days of the plane crash, and to say, therefore, that carrots cause plane crashes. That would not be good analysis. But to be able to look deeper, don't get stuck with just the data collection, but understand its implications. I mean, if it happens to 4 out of 5 people, there's a pretty good chance you're not exempt. Even if you're a teenager and you think you are, you're not. It's going to happen to 4 out of 5 people. Be proactive. Work with that information that's out there, that data, to try and deal with it, to analyze it better. Number 4 on our list is to be adaptable. Adaptability. Moses assumed that he was going to go down to Egypt, grab those people up. It's going to take them a month or 2 to come across, and then they're going to get to the promised land, and they're going to go on in. Change of plans. And now he has to be adaptable. How long did they spend back out in the wilderness? 40 years. Adaptability is increasingly. The world is changing faster. In fact, just in the last couple years with this AI, artificial intelligence, everybody is seeing that this very one thing will in fact increase the rate of change, the speed of change, to where the curve is no longer linear. Now we're into the, the hockey stick type exponential curve. Just this one thing, and there's a dozen other things that are also weighing in and contributing to the speed at which the world is changing. As a leader, you've got to be able to look at this stuff quickly and adapt to it. And be proactive, even go out there ahead of it. One of my favorite proverbs, or beatitudes, I should say, is, "Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape." Now, you won't find that in Matthew 5, but it's still a good beatitude. Even Darwin, in his book, The Origin of Species, and everybody says that he teaches survival of the fittest. But if you've read the book, you come to understand that what he's teaching is the survival of the fast adapters, those that can adapt to change the fastest. Those are the fittest, those are the ones that do survive. But it's that adaptability to change. And is our culture changing? Yes, and changing at a pretty good clip now. And things that we never saw coming have snuck up on us and hit us. And now, I went a little deep with the analysis on these law cases during personal ministry time, religious liberty time, because I'm trying to see how in the world this thing doesn't look like it has anything to do with anything, but I know it does. We won't be till we look back on it that we see these things. But so trying to be adaptable, trying to be agile in our adaptability. You know what kills adaptability? This is the way we've always done it. Yeah. And it was just last week, a lady asked me about why do we cover the communion table with this cloth over everything? And I said, it's to keep the flies out. And it is. And we had a problem. We haven't had a problem with flies since we invented air conditioning. Okay, we keep the windows shut, and yet we still do it because that's the way we've always done it. Try something new. Again, fellowship meal, good place to do that. Be adaptable. Venture out of your comfort zone. If your background is in numbers, delve over there into the world of words, and vice versa. Explore opportunities to do something new. There are ways, stretching yourself is the best way to develop this adaptability quotient in your life. Number 5, creativity. Any idea that's new and useful to the organization is creativity. So when someone wants to say, why don't we do this for evangelism? I'm here to say, let's try it. Let's try it, okay? Now, if we have some known failure paths, they do that and it always does this, we need to share that. Doesn't mean we won't try it, but we need to be realistic with what for instance, this last week, one little community took the great controversy and they put a pair of eclipse glasses inside the book, and they put one on the porch of every house in town. That's pretty innovative, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, signs in the heavens and all that, the eclipse coming over. Pretty cool. Unfortunately, all of the feedback, nobody ever said, thank you for the eclipse glasses. It was all about keep your religion to yourself and just unfortunate. And that comes back to some of that crowd mentality. If the very first response had been on the social media thing, if the very first response had been, how thoughtful of them to provide eclipse glasses for everybody, I believe the trend would have been different. But the first response, in fact, was this very vulgar response that, and everyone just fell in line with the same style of response behind it. But creativity, try something new, try something different. What if we did that? Let's be versatile. The most creative person in Moses' circle? His name was Bezalel. And God gave him this gift. Now, I'm not saying he wasn't naturally talented or whatnot. I saw a picture yesterday of a statue carved out of marble like 600 years ago. I mean, the guy literally, all he had was a hammer and chisel. And yet this is a bust of a lady with a lace collar and a pearl necklace on it and buttons down the front. Exquisite detail, all done with a hammer and chisel. That's creativity that I don't have. But encourage one another, promote diverse perspectives. Creativity is a very important part of leadership. Number 6, leaders need to become comfortable with ambiguity. Everything's not always clear. You may have a great sense of direction of this is the way we want to go, but it feels like we're driving through the fog. And so let's just hunker down and do what we know we should do, when we should do it, for the right reason and the right way at the right time. And you just keep going, but it's really ambiguous of how it's going to work out or how it's going to go. Mario Andretti, when he got done driving race cars for a living, had his team build him a 2-seater Formula One car. And you can now go and take lessons on how to drive a Formula One car from Mario Andretti, if you have the budget. And he has this, he says, if you feel like you're in control, you're not driving fast enough. That's kind of scary thought, isn't it? I mean, I have driven at that point where it feels like just a hair more and we will be out of control. But the point is, good leaders become comfortable with the ambiguity that's around them and that they're not getting the feedback they need or whatever, but they're able to stay the course and do what they know needs to be done. And because the human tendency first is to just stop. We can't see where we're going clearly, so we're not going to go anywhere. Now we know which way we want to go. So how to set those priorities, how to keep moving, how to be comfortable with it. It's one of the things that's harder to develop, but there are things you can do where even when you don't know what the right answer is, you know what the right action is. And so you can do that. Or there's a lot of times you don't know what the right word is, but you know what the right action is. And we need to be able to move forward, become comfortable with that, and move forward with what we know to be right no matter what. Number 7, resilience. Good leaders are very resilient. You know what Moses had to put up with? Whining, right? I mean, time after time after time, they would come to him in spite of the fact that God is right there in that cloud, and in spite of the fact that God has fed us every day, and in spite of the fact that wherever we camp, we go out and speak to that rock which represents Christ, and a river of water flows out of it. A river, not just a spring. You've got to water 1 million people and all their livestock. It's a river that flows out of that rock. And the people complain. And good leaders are able to deal with that mentally and keep going. Get knocked down, get back up. One of my favorite speeches, and interestingly enough, it is a political speech, by Teddy Roosevelt. It's called The Man in the Arena. And if you've never read that, you need to Google that this afternoon and read the whole. I'll read just one paragraph. He says this. He says, it's not the critic who counts, not the one who points out how the strong man stumbled or how the doer of deeds might have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred with sweat and dust and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and becomes short again and again, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, and spends himself in a worthy cause, who, if he wins, knows the triumph of high achievement, and who, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. You get knocked down, get back up. Resilience. How do you build your resilience? Take on an assignment that doesn't have a clear objective. This is the frustrating, we've all been there. Yeah, we want to reach our community for Christ. Okay, that's a great objective. The how is not so clear. And go into spaces where the odds might be a little against you. There's jobs where you may not have any formal authority over people. It's a good place for you to develop leadership. Will they? In fact, it's interesting enough, these headhunter firms now, when they're looking for CEOs to hire, one of the things they want to know is what volunteer organizations that they are part of. Because it's real easy to boss around employees who are dependent on you for their paycheck. What they want to know is, how good are you at leading people who don't have to follow you? They're only going to follow you when they see that leadership. And so now these headhunter crowds are looking for the voluntary roles that these CEOs, potential CEOs, have played, whether it was the Boy Scouts or whatever on up. So that's how you can develop that as well. Number 8, empathy. Good leaders have empathy. This is one of the most clearest examples where Moses just shines so forth. Remember his prayer there, Lord, save them even if you have to wipe me out. Man, that's empathetic for this big group of whiners, you know. But he did. He loved people. He had the same love for people that God has for people. And that's what we want. We want to have that same love for people that Jesus has for people, so that we can empathize. We can not just sympathize and see it from a distance. We can empathize. We can be right in there with it. Leaders must foster relationships, build trust, and actively engage with their team members. You've got to be right in there with it. And part of that is developing an emotional intelligence that lets you not just be crushed by your empathy. That you can empathize and then move on. It doesn't just send you back to bed for the rest of the day. How to develop greater empathy? Research shows our tendency is to gravitate toward others that are just like us. And that's we hang out, and even the temptation at fellowship meals to sit with people that we already know and whatnot. All this creativity and moving outside, all of this, it's amazing how much of this training can happen at fellowship meal. Okay? This is the chance we get to work on ourselves to develop our leadership skills. And part of empathy is just to sit down with someone and say, well, tell me about yourself. And start making that bond. Good leaders can do this. They do it well. Even Thursday, I watched an example of that where I'm sitting across the table and I'm kind of just struggling along, but my co-leader is so good at this and just starts, well, how did you two meet? And we go move on and on and on. And the conversation just flows. Number 9, our last one on the list, is a successor. You are not done until you have trained your replacement. And on the other hand, don't be the one that does it all. If you are irreplaceable, you can't be promoted. You're stuck right there. You don't want to be irreplaceable. You want to be training your replacement so that if something happens and you run over a lawnmower on the way to church or something, somebody can step right in there and fill in, and things will just keep flowing. Train your successor now. Your job is not done until your successor is well trained and even placed into position. There really is nothing wrong with stepping back and watch. This is what Jesus did. Jesus says, okay, I'm going to do it, you guys watch. He says, okay, now I'm going to do it, and you guys help. He says, now you guys do it and I'll help you. And then you guys do it and I'll watch you. And now you guys get someone else to teach that process to. It's called discipleship, and it's a cycle. It's go ye therefore and make disciples. It's not just go make members. It's go make disciples. Who was Moses' replacement? Joshua. How long did he train to be? Over 40 years. Joshua is one of the few people who left Egypt with Moses and yet still makes it into the promised land. But we see Joshua active early on when the Amalekites are coming up from the rear and attacking the rear of the crowd, and Moses is up on the hill with Hur and Aaron, and they're holding up his arms. Joshua's the one down there leading that charge, defending the people. Joshua's the one who's on the mountain while Moses is getting the 10 Commandments. He's the one who said, I hear something in the camp, remember? Yeah. And on, and yet, sadly, Joshua failed to choose his own successor. As we get on into Joshua and Judges, it says the people followed the Lord all the days of Joshua and all the days of those who knew Joshua, and then they went astray. Alexander the Great says, I'm not afraid of an army of lions led by a sheep. I'm afraid of an army of sheep led by a lion. Leadership is important. Leadership is critical, and you are a leader, and Jesus is asking you to step up and be the leader that he wants you to be. And to be the follower. John 10:27, Jesus says, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. And I give unto them eternal life, and they shall never perish, neither shall any man pluck them out of my hand. Everyone needs a leader, and everyone is a leader, and every good leader is a follower. Jesus isn't just asking you to follow. I mean, he is asking you to do that, but he isn't just asking you to do that. He's asking you to lead. He's asking you to see and understand that you are a leader in your circle, and to take that seriously for all that it entails for the people that are part of your circle. And I want to ask you if you're willing today to make that commitment to lead where God leads you. If you are willing to do that today, say, I'm willing to lead where God leads me. Raise your hand. Make that commitment. Not to me, make that commitment to God. God, lead me in the way you want me to go. Father, we're going to sing about that. Number 482, Father, lead me day by day.